And good morning. We are live on the Falcons Podcast. We are going to bring in our Facebook groups, Atlanta Falcons fans on All Falcons and Scott Kennedy Sports. So just one moment, please, as we get those rolling up and ready to go. And welcome in, everybody. This is the Falcons Podcast on Monday morning. It's the first full Monday morning of the offseason, it feels like, even though it was a heck of a wild card weekend, super wild card weekend. It was actually kind of fun listening to Tony Romo and Jim Nantz make fun of super wild card weekend as we enjoyed the games. Great slate of games. We want to talk a little bit about the Atlanta Falcons this morning because they still have a lot going on, an open defensive coordinator position after Dean Pease retired. We want to run through some of the candidates. We also want to knock on the door, kick the tires, so to speak, of some of the veteran quarterback options that might be available if the Falcons decide to go that route. I feel pretty confident in saying that they're going to bring in another veteran quarterback. I don't think you want to have just a rookie behind Desmond Ridder, and you want to have somebody that come in as a legitimate that can compete with Ridder. Look at these teams in the playoffs. You got the Baltimore Ravens. You got the San Francisco 49ers. This just off the top of my head, several teams are having to rely on their backup quarterbacks to win. So having two quarterbacks now, it seems like it's going to be awfully tough to pour all of your resources into just one quarterback with all of the injuries that are out there. So we'll get into some of the veteran options and some of the conversations I had on Twitter about possibly Daniel Jones and what sense that might make. And as usual, Twitter overreacts to anything like that. So let's go in here and we'll talk. Say hello to some folks in the chat while it's reaching out into the internet sphere and the social media verse. So hit that like button and share. That helps find everybody and wake everybody up. So Michael Ranquillo is always in here. If you're not first every time, you're first every time, Michael. Appreciate you coming in. Joe Cannon coming on Facebook. He says, "Great morning, Scott." Yes, it is. It's a beautiful morning. It's nice and crisp and cool this weekend in Atlanta, that's for sure. 100 Realist says, "Good morning, guys." And yes, Nick Kendell should be joining me here momentarily if he remembered to set his alarm. He's in Seattle, so we're coast to coast. I give him a little bit of a walking line, a line to get going a little bit before we get cranked up and I intro the show. Lawrence Rivera, Broncos fan. I said, "I wish I caught more games to talk Falcons with you." That's okay, Lawrence. You ask good questions. So, you ask some of the questions that I don't necessarily think to answer, and you can ask some of those. We get kind of an echo chamber in here, and sometimes we think that, I don't want to talk about that. Everybody knows we've talked about that before. Well, we get new people in here all the time. So, you could ask stuff, where are the Falcons going at 8? Is Desmond Ridder the answer? How do you feel about your new coach? All those kind of things are all relevant. 888 Dr. Pepper coming on YouTube. He says, "Hi, Scott, and good morning." And we're going to take that moment to say good morning to Nick Kendell. Nick Kendell, good morning. How are you today?
Doing pretty well off. Happy Martin Luther King Day to everybody joining us today. Everybody with work or without work today. This is my only thing I got going today. So happy to be here hanging out. And coffee just finished, feeling pretty darn good, and enjoyed the surprisingly competitive weekend of football so far.
Mm-hmm.
The only game that was not really competitive was the San Francisco 49ers versus the Seattle Seahawks. Everything else has been coming down to the last play of the game. So been a good weekend.
Yeah, as Dom says, he's coming in on YouTube. He says, "Good morning, Nick and Scott and Dog Nation. Happy MLK Day to you as well." Never forget all about what this day is for. One of the true heroes of this nation, for sure. Says, "Got to watch you guys this morning at work." And says, "Great games this weekend. The 49ers killed the Seahawks in the second half. It was 24-6. Great defense." Yeah, great defense, efficient offense. With some playmakers, you can win a lot of ball games. And San Francisco certainly looks dangerous right now. Nick, I introed the show. I said we wanted to run through some of the defensive coordinator candidates for the Falcons, but we can also hit on the games this weekend just real quick. The 27-0 lead blowing from the Chargers, epic. I mean, I turned it off at 24-0, and then I got my alert from NFL. Hey, it's a 10-point game. I'm like, really? All right, I'll turn it back on. So I did get to see the end of that one. Was that a pretty good growing up moment for Trevor Lawrence, to be able to bounce back like that after what would be a nightmare first half?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, he was getting fooled left and right. Staley they had a pretty good game plan going on. I think Asante Samuel Jr. had 2 interceptions, and they were playing great football to start. But the Chargers could not run the ball to save their life, and the Jags picked their way back and eventually got the lead and won the game. So pretty great game. I feel bad for Justin Herbert and Brandon Staley, but that's the game. Somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose. But yeah, an epic collapse that, God, only the Chargers could do something like that. It seems like they're the only team that could come away with that level of epic collapse.
I mean, what's funny is because of that game, Matt Ryan is still trending on a couple of my timelines. 48 hours later, based on that game, Matt Ryan was like 17 for 24 with 2 touchdowns and had a 140, had an almost perfect quarterback rating in that 28-3 game. I think the problem in that number was probably the 24. It would have been more, of course, if he wouldn't have gotten sacked a bunch of times. But
yeah,
but yes, the play. J.K. Dobbins had a lot to say after the Ravens lost that game. Tyler Huntley, trying to go over the top from too far out. I can see where there were some big questions there. That's a mistake, and what a turnaround! My goodness. Collinsworth, I think, was doing that game. He's like, do you remember a game of this level that turned on a play like that? And I don't remember one. I mean, the closest one I remember was 93 Auburn, Florida. Florida was up, 10-0, and they were ranked 1 or 2 in the country, up 10-0, have the ball in the 15. I think it was Calvin Jackson was a cornerback's name, pick six, the other direction, game on. But that was in the first quarter. This was the game. This was the game winner. So just huge play, huge turnaround play. The Bengals are vulnerable. They're vulnerable.
Yeah. Yep. I think there's no perfect team in the playoffs right now. Every single team is beatable. I guess besides, it's crazy because it's such a quarterback driven league, but the team that's played the best this weekend, I mentioned already, is the 49ers. I mean, I was listening to a post game podcast, and Brock Purdy, he's getting crowned right now by a lot in the NFL circle, which is a great story. But you know how many contested throws he had in that entire game?
2. Yeah.
2.
Building guys are running. Good offensive line, running game, good defense. Hey, you can win. And then some, it's. Yes, I know.
Yeah, and also just the scheming of guys being wide open. I mean, I know it's as simple as, he still has to make the right read and deliver it in time, but guys are wide open in that 49ers scheme right now. It's pretty damn incredible. Then you have their defense shutting down the Seahawks completely in the second half. I think giving up 0 points. I mean, I know that there's some Broncos fans and whatnot that don't want DeMeco Ryans as their head coach, but I mean, God, their defense is just incredible how they tackle and hand off players in zone. I mean, they're as well oiled of a machine as I can remember playing defense for a bit. And they don't have incredible talent in their secondary. Their front seven obviously is very talented, but it's mostly, especially at linebacker, it's a day 2, day 3 guys. They just play as smart as any defense I can remember right now.
Roger Cook coming in. He said, afternoon all. Missed you guys live for a while, but always catch up later. Enjoy listening to you. Appreciate you, Roderick. Thanks for coming in. And so, let's stay on the current games for a little while, because I want to talk a little Daniel Jones. Talking about, possible. We put this out as a tweet. What do you think Daniel Jones would look like in an Arthur Smith offense? And the Falcons may kick the tires on that. Now, obviously, the Twitter reactions ranged from all over the place to some of them. This is the worst idea in the world. What, making a phone call to an agent, you moron? I mean, this is, you don't have to overreact to everything. Throwing out a suggestion, throwing out a talking point isn't saying, hey, this is what we should do. It's a discussion. Discuss. Be a human being. So, Daniel Jones, make the case of why Daniel Jones would be a round peg and a round hole for Arthur Smith and the Atlanta Falcons offense.
Very smart football player. Had a high rate of turnovers before this season, which is a concern. But as far as throwing the football, been pretty good with that this season. And a extremely underrated athlete. Under center run game, playing off of the run game, and getting it done with his best weapons being Isaiah Hodgins and Darius Slayton on the outside. I mean, Daniel Jones has had a phenomenal season with Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka out there. And I think the athleticism of Daniel Jones and the size and the athleticism has always been extremely underrated. He's a very good athlete in open space, and
Mm-hmm.
we saw this season how much the Falcons want to use that quarterback to stress the edges, give them multiple options in that run game. I think he would be a excellent fit in this offense. I think he's a much more physically, much bigger, more physically gifted version of Ryan Tannehill. And we saw how great Ryan Tannehill was in this Arthur Smith offense. He's bigger. I think he's faster. I know Ryan Tannehill played wide receiver, but he never looked as fast in the open field or able to handle as much of a run game aspect in his play as we saw with Daniel Jones this season. And yesterday was a great example. Obviously, the explosives for that Giants offense have not been there this season, but I don't think their wide receiver talent, their pass catching talent is good at all, to be completely honest. So I would kick the tires. I think he'd be an excellent scheme fit in this team. Obviously, I'm not looking to pay him top money, but give him a 3-year contract with high guarantees that lower the overall cap hit in comparison to his contemporaries. And I think that's something I would personally consider if I was the Falcons, especially if you had any questions on Ritter, especially if you didn't like any of the quarterbacks in this draft class. I mean, and I also think this Atlanta team is infrastructure-wise, a great sell. If I was a quarterback like Daniel Jones, I would be very interested in coming to Atlanta to play with Arthur Smith and throw to the young guys that they have in the offensive line that they have.
You've got 2 top 10 PFF offensive linemen, assuming you re-sign Caleb McGarry.
Yeah,
You've got those guys, and you've got Kyle Pitts, and hey, why don't we throw Quentin Johnson in there? I think it's a pretty easy sell too. Now, when you talk about top dollar, what is that to you? What is that coming to you? Because that's where it comes in. I would advocate Terry Fontenot getting on the phone and calling the agent and expressing interest. Hey, if things, let us know. Give us a ballpark. What do you know? What I don't want to put them up in the the 40+ million range. That's not for me. So what are you thinking?
I think it's crazy jump off an average per year of the contracts right now. You got Baker Mayfield making $15 million a year, Jameis Winston $14 million. Then it jumps up to Tom Brady at 25, then Ryan Tannehill 29, Matt Ryan at 30. I'd be looking to pay him about $20 million a year. I think that's honestly a fair deal. He might be wanting more than that, but 20 per year more guaranteed. Maybe you can get it to 25 per year, but you'd have the guarantees be less on the back end so that way you can move on from him if something happens. But I think he'd be interesting. Also, I think that because of his play style, he's not one that you want to commit to a long time, especially if you're going to run him as much as we saw in this Giants playoff game. But a 3-year deal averaging 20-25 million per year, which would put him at the, oh gosh, guys do math. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15th, about the 16th highest paid quarterback in terms of average per year. I'd be interested. I think that's a fair deal.
Yeah. Okay. So I agree with you. That's when we talk about kick the tires. Marcus Mariota was on about 14. To go +6 to Daniel Jones, I think you're in the right neighborhood. That said, I don't think that's going to get it done anymore.
I think 25, 30.
I think he's played his way out of that. I think the Giants are going to want to re-sign him. And you have Ian Rappaport out there this morning talking about a possible franchise tag if they want to try and bring back Barkley and Daniel Jones, and they might use the tag on one or the other. Now, a tag on that's a $40 million difference on a franchise tag between quarterback and running back. So, I think the Giants will pay. I don't want to say above market, but anything competitive, he'll probably want to stay there. And I think he's going to be in the 25+ range over the course of this next contract, which for me would price him out of what I feel comfortable putting into a new quarterback with this team. So, again, one of the mentions I have is like, quarterback pay is set. No, it's not. What are you talking about? And if I were to give Daniel Jones an offer, I'll give you 3 and 60 and make them come up for 4 and 100 at 25 a year. Okay, well, that's less money in the free agent market that I have to compete with from the New York Giants. There's nothing wrong with that. So would I kick the tires if I'm Terry Fontenot? Yeah, I'd put an agent and express interest. What are you guys thinking? Do I think it will happen? No, I don't. I don't think it'll happen. I think you're still highly likely to have Desmond Ridder be your quarterback because I think the cost of acquiring a veteran would be the cost risk value there wouldn't be enough to say, I'd rather have Desmond right now for where this team is. And Carl's coming in. He said, I'm sorry, guys, we should draft a quarterback also. People's jobs are on the line waiting on Ritter. This year's draft class is much better than last year's draft class. Appreciate you coming in, Carl. If CJ Stroud is there at 8, I'm taking him. If Bryce Young is there at 8, I'm taking him. Otherwise, I wouldn't take a quarterback at 8. I don't want the one. I was thinking about it, in part of these conversations. Aaron comes in, he says, relax on this talk about Daniel Jones. I'm like, I'm pretty relaxed. I'm pretty chill about this draft class. The one guy I think where I would start to get kind of like I've been the last 2 draft classes about would be if Will Levis went at 8. That might make me a little angry. Anywhere else you can go on this team, I'm going to pretty much be okay if you're getting, as long as you're not reaching, if you're within a group of 5 players at any position. But if Stroud's there, yeah, I'm probably taking Stroud. I'm not passing on him at 8. And at the very least, I'm talking to somebody about trading down.
Yeah, and we'll see. Is CJ Stroud officially declared yet? I mean, today's the deadline.
Actually, you're right. I don't think he has yet.
So that would be wild.
Yeah, and Ohio State. Ohio State's probably got the most money of it. That in Texas probably have the most money available. The biggest alumni / fan base in the country is Ohio State. So he could play on the franchise tag for 1 year at $20 million and come back. But Stroud would be the guy. Carl, I'm with you. I think you're going to have 2 new quarterbacks come in. They might have Logan Woodside. I haven't even gotten his name straight in my head. He actually got some snaps, I think. Maybe that was a dream. I'm dreaming football again. Logan Woodside, the guy they picked up off the Texans practice squad to make their number 2. He could be one of the guys next year, but they will definitely bring in a third. Felipe Franks won't be the option there. So I think Carl, I'm with you 100%. Now, where do you go? Where do you go for that? You go with a veteran, a steady veteran backup. I think you've got to have at least one, and maybe Logan's that guy. Lawrence comes in. He says, how come the Falcons or Broncos never interviewed Brian Daboll? Sorry for the name spelling. I think he nailed it, Lawrence. I think that's how you spell Daboll. Daboll was going to the Giants. So that was all but a done deal. They may have had to cross some technicalities and stuff, but I don't think Daboll really he wasn't interviewing out doing the rounds. He didn't do the rounds. So again, when I mentioned kick the tires, you call up his agent and say, hey, we're interested. And he goes, yeah, thank you. We appreciate it. He's going to be a New York Giant. So he was a top candidate, and the Giants, there was mutual interest there from the beginning. So
the Giants' new general manager
going to happen.
The Giants' new general manager is coming over from Buffalo and had a relationship with Daboll. They both obviously worked in Buffalo, so that he was going there. Also, I think the Giants are considered like one of the 5 premium coaching spots in the NFL with the Mara family. If correct me if I'm wrong, I don't really know my Giants history as well. But yeah, he was always going there. But man, what a good coaching job he's done there in New York. I mean, that New York East, but Dallas, Philly, and the Giants look pretty darn good out there. So we'll be fun to see how they continue going forward. We got
Nick, you're breaking up just a little bit, so I'm going to get this next question here while things come out. Nick, you're breaking up on me just a shade. But it's Michael Ranquillo says, do you guys think quarterback Lamar Jackson played his last game with the Baltimore Ravens? Going back to veteran quarterbacks and possibilities, Benjamin Albright doubled down again, saying the Falcons will be at the front of the line if there is a deal to be done. About the Seahawks. The Seahawks I think the Seahawks are in play at quarterback again, Nick. Going in, I don't know, we've talked about maybe rolling it with Geno Smith. They got excellent value for Geno Smith this year. Geno could go from 7 to 15. He could double his money next year with somebody else. Again, Marcus Mariota was on 14. Geno Smith should be in that range too, at least. Are the Seahawks going to be sold there? The Falcons will definitely be interested in Lamar Jackson. Do you think he's played with his last game with the Baltimore Ravens? I don't know. It's hard to move a franchise quarterback, Nick, but this one might be done.
There's a lot of weirdness coming out of Baltimore with this one, from Sammy Watkins talking about, man, if we had him, I think we'd be good. What is it? A sprain, LCL sprain, he'd be good. John Harbaugh, when he originally got hurt, saying, oh, he should be back in 2 weeks, and now we're on week 6, 7. Didn't travel with the team to Cincinnati as well. It's I wonder if this is beyond repair. Obviously, one of the weird dynamics with Lamar Jackson is that he's his own agent, so there's no middleman there. It can get pretty personal. We think you're this much.
Yeah,
What?
we've talked about that
Screw
before. I don't want my coach negotiating contracts with players. You want both sides being a little pissed off when you walk out of a negotiation, and I don't
Yeah.
want that carrying over onto the field.
Yeah, well, that's one of the negatives about the players negotiating their own contract is then it becomes much more personal rather than the negotiation, and then the agent comes back to the players after advocating for them.
Mhm.
It's a lot less professional, and I mean, not to be pro agent all the time. They're skimming 15% off the top or something, but there's pros and cons on all sides, so could be possible. The one thing with Lamar that would make me skeptical is that, from my understanding, is that he saw that Deshaun Watson contract and said, I want me one of those 100% guaranteed contracts.
Mhm.
And the big difference with Deshaun Watson is that he had that full no trade clause, so he could really dictate where he was going. And as soon as Cleveland offered that 100% guaranteed contract, okay, I'm in. So would you be willing to pay that for a quarterback who runs as much as he does, as the frame that he possesses? I mean, no doubt he's a dynamic athlete, but what is it gonna be like 6 years from now on a
Mhm.
still 100% guaranteed contract? I mean, we haven't seen that before. That's just never happened in the NFL. So it'll be fascinating. That's the storyline of the offseason.
Yeah, I worry a little bit about. I mean, Lamar Jackson can beat you with his arm, but his number one weapon is his athleticism.
Mhm.
That tends to start to deteriorate faster than an arm, right? 50-year-old quarterback still throwing the ball. I mean, we can go old guys for a long time. Donovan McNabb, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees. We can go lots of guys that could still throw. Donovan McNabb could still throw. Donovan McNabb was a hell of an athlete, but his arm was still his meal ticket. Um, that's a great question, Michael. And I wouldn't advocate for what I think it would cost to bring in Lamar Jackson. Again, I'm okay with Desmond Ridder and where he is and the trajectory of this team. And if he flops, then move the world to get your quarterback the next year. Because again, you're not a Super Bowl team this coming year. See what you got. I see how he progresses, and then you can make options in 2024. Carl asked about Anthony Richardson. What do you think about Anthony Richardson in the second round? Falcons are picking. They snake the second round, right? So they've got the first pick of the 7 and 10 teams. They would have the last pick. I think it's around 40, somewhere in there, maybe a little bit later, 44. If he's available at 44, I would absolutely take Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, I
I
mean
don't know that he's going to be available. I would consider Carl trading down and taking him in the first and the 20s.
Yeah.
I would consider it. And then I don't necessarily need to start him right away. I don't want him at 8 because then there's too much pressure to play the kid he's not ready. He would have been better off with one more year at Florida and putting $10 million of NIL money in his pocket. But I would take Anthony Richardson in the second in a heartbeat. And can you believe, Nick, I did a mock draft. I got Jalen Carter at 8. I got Bijan Robinson at 44. And there were people complaining that the Falcons didn't need a running back when I got Bijan Robinson at 44. We don't need I was like, I don't care.
Yeah.
If Derrick Henry wants to sign a $5 free agent contract, you say, no, we're okay.
Yeah.
We're okay there. Come on, guys. Be serious. Forget the position. Look at the player. Bijan Robinson might be the best damn player in the draft. You're not going to have to worry about taking him at 44. Anthony Richardson in the second round at 44, I'd be real interested.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to make it out of the top 15, personally, especially given the lack of depth in this quarterback class. I mean, we were looking at this class earlier. Oh, this guy could come out. He's talented. This guy, Bo Nix, Michael Penix, Devin Leary, excuse me. No, these guys are all returning back to school because the NIL money. So the depth of this quarterback class is bad. You're going to have a big drop-off after the first 4. I mean, people are talking about...
Bo Nix said he was going back to Oregon?
Yep.
Okay, I couldn't remember if that was the case or not. I think the NIL money is going to be good for the college game.
I agree. I am ready to get through this Rona extra year period because we have like 26-year-old guys playing right now. So I don't mind it in that case, but it's almost like dragged out a year too long for a lot of like Cam Rising is going to be back at Utah. I mean, it's just like we
were talking about him 2 years ago as a possible guy.
I know.
But yes, you're going to have guys playing at a higher level. It'll be tougher to get into college, I think the transfer portal has thousands of people in it when these guys are coming back, but the product should be better and you should have more pro-ready guys going to college that are coming back that way. Like I said, it would have been good for Anthony Richardson.
As far as Anthony Richardson, though, before we move on,
Mhm.
the Jordan Reed, who I respect tremendously in this business, second year now working for ESPN, coming up there doing a lot of draft content. He had Anthony Richardson going 9 overall, I believe, to
Mhm.
the Carolina Panthers. So as far as the conversation of taking Anthony Richardson in the second round, we can walk that one out back and
Right.
leave it there.
Well, and to be fair, Carl did say, "What do you think about Anthony Richardson in the second round?" I think he'll never make it there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I think. That's what we think. And as 888 Dr. Pepper says, Richardson will not get out of the top 15, maybe even top 10. He's extremely erratic, but his ceiling is about as high as it gets. A lot of NFL people are really interested in this guy, and that's good. That's good for the Falcons. If they decide, we're okay with Ritter, you want quarterbacks to be available. I want someone pounding on my door at 8 and sending me 2 first. Hey, we're gonna send you. We're sitting there at 12, and we're gonna send you our number 1 and a 2024 number 1. Done. I'm moving back to 12. Yes, please. No problem. So you want those quarterbacks to be good. You want to start hyping up Will Levis. You want to start hyping up Anthony Richardson. You're hoping CJ Stroud is going to enter the draft here because that makes all of those picks, that makes your pick more and more valuable. And there's nothing more valuable than someone wanting to trade up for a quarterback, for sure. Now, before we get out of here, Nick, I want to touch on the candidates that have been talked about. And I'm going to run through the names here real quick. Al Holcomb, Panthers. He was intern defensive coordinator with the Packers, has some experience on both sides of the ball. Jerry Gray Panthers was Holcomb. Jerry Gray was Packers defensive back and passing game coordinator. I got those two confused. Apologies. Ryan Nielsen, co-defensive coordinator with the Saints. So we're looking at the Panthers and the Saints. Jim Haslett is rumored, according to the Falcoholic, to be a target. And for me, the two that are the most interesting, linebackers coach, former Miami Dolphins coach Brian Flores, and Denver Broncos defensive coordinator Ejiro Evero. Now, the Broncos blocked the Falcons from interviewing Ejiro Evero. I disagree with that move a little bit, but again, it could be either way. I want them to be excited. I want them to be interviewed. I want them really to want Ejiro Evero, because if I hire a coach that doesn't want him, I've got him under contract. Maybe I can trade him. Maybe I can, oh yeah, we're going to keep him, knowing I can't, and I'm just on a timeline here, but play a little poker. Maybe I could get a second round pick for Ejiro Evero as a defensive coordinator, but I would block the move until I had a defensive coordinator in place, but I wouldn't have blocked the interview. I would want the Falcons to want this guy so bad that they're willing to send me anything.
I don't know what the rule is on terms of coordinator compensation. I think there might be like a line of demarcation where you can't trade picks for coordinators. I think it has to be like head coach or general managers you can trade, but I'm not sure about the coordinators. I had conflicting information on that one.
Okay,
So
if you can't trade them, then there isn't really any reason. You can interview after the fact.
Yeah.
Because there's a very good chance that Evero ends up as defensive coordinator of the Denver Broncos next year. And he wouldn't make a lateral move. And if you're letting him interview, or are you showing your hand? We're talking poker here, but a lot of these deals, it's a poker game between I want to move up. How much am I going to pay this guy? How much am I? A lot of it is poker. So I'm talking poker cliches and analogies here, but it's poker.
Yeah, 100%. So I don't blame the Broncos for blocking the Ejiro Evero. The other thing that changes the dynamic going forward is that if you let him go this season, you get no compensation back. But now they have that rule where if a minority head or a minority coach is in your system for multiple years, and they get an obvious step up. So let's say you have a running back coach, he's there for 3 years and he moves up to an offensive coordinator. I think you get compensatory pick back for that. Same with Evero. If he's there for another year and then gets a head coach position, Broncos will get compensatory picks back. So that's part of the game. I also think it's until the Broncos have their head coach laid out and we know who that is, probably be blocking it because they're going to give that coach the chance to be like, we're keeping him or we're getting a different guy in there.
And for Falcons fans, Ejiro Evero was a first-year defensive coordinator at the Denver Broncos who did a magnificent job under incredibly trying circumstances. I have said, he's only there 1 year, but 1 year with the Denver Broncos and the circus that they had this year was like dog years. It's like 7 years of experience. They had injuries out the yin-yang. They had their offense was historically awful. And still that defense played at a very high level for most of the season before finally started to show some wear and tear at the end of the year. Very, very good candidate, wins the interviews, commands a room. Love this guy. I mentioned when the first guy to get fired this year was Frank Reich. I told the Colts guys I know, when you're writing up your possible candidates, put Ejiro Evero's name on the list. And that was week 8. So that was someone I wanted to keep an eye on. Now, Brian Flores, he will be a guy that will elicit some strong reactions either way. Let's talk about Brian Flores as the candidate, as a defensive coordinator. Scheme, you get somebody out of Pittsburgh, I'm usually pretty happy. You get some experience under Mike Tomlin, one of my favorite coaches in the world, and Brian Flores could come down in here and would be a big name hire to replace Dean Pease.
A lot of man, a lot of cover one, a lot of blitzing. So that's my understanding of him when he was at Miami. Obviously, with Brian Flores, he has that pending lawsuit with the league, where he said he had some sham interviews and the improper firing in Miami. But we'll see. The one that I keep hearing Brian Flores connected to is that Cleveland Browns spot. I know that he has a very close relationship with Deshaun Watson, and they have coming from a cover one-esque scheme there as well. But Brian Flores would be interesting. I think he's probably the best of the candidates that you listed here. But would be a good get for the Falcons, and it'd probably come down to money and power, and Arthur Smith might just say, hey, I'm gonna leave you be on that defensive side of the ball, which is a big get in my opinion if I was the defensive coordinator. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I think DC, again, Evero would be my number one choice out of that, but that's a lateral move for him, and something would have to change rapidly, including he's up for some head coaching jobs. Not getting a head coaching job, and the Broncos, whoever's coming in at head coach, if it's not Ejiro Evero, wanting to bring in their own guys. So they would have to let him go and all of those things. So Malcolm Brown coming in saying aloha, hello from Homer, Alaska, before we get out of here, because we do have to get running. We go about 30 minutes on Monday mornings. We will be back on Wednesday morning when we start talking, well, pretty similar to how we talk today. Overarching, we'll be talking some draft, we'll be talking some playoffs, we'll be talking some Falcons, Broncos, Colts, you name it. Number one picks, Bears, all of them. So, but for now, Nick and I are going to head over to Mile High Huddle on YouTube and talk a little Broncos for breakfast, coaching candidates, player personnel, all that good stuff. So we will see you Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. Appreciate everybody being here that came in and joined the chat, and hit that like and share and subscribe button to help us out. And until then, we'll see you next time.